Next speaker, I want to welcome our next speaker, Stephanie Noriega, pronouns she, her, hers, on solidarity, not charity, and social workers' perspective on creating communities of care. Let's go, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Mo. I am, first of all, let me say thank you to the organizers who put in all of this work. Y'all are truly fire and amazing. And thank you all for showing up. What I like to think every time I'm in these spaces is that we are the ones who we've been waiting for, right? So the time is now, and we are all here building and sharing our knowledge. So I'm grateful, and this is the moment, y'all. So with that said, my name is Stephanie Noriega. I use she, her pronouns. I am from and I reside and also in relationship with these sacred Tohono O'odham and Yaqui lands. And so I am a social worker. I am an organizer. I'm a transformative justice practitioner. I'm an advocate. And I am also an abolitionist. I do not believe in systems of policing and punishment. I believe that our people deserve better, and we have better. So it's our responsibility to build on that. But needless to say, I am a social worker, and I have been doing this work in my community for about 12 years. I've worked in the nonprofit sector, I've worked in medical facilities, I have worked in the legal settings, schools, I mean, you name it. I know the system very well. And so with that said, I originally wanted to come on and talk a little bit about transformative justice, but when I started to hear all of the conversations going on when we were started to talk about divesting from the police and policing systems, the reaction to move to social workers, whether it was to put social workers in police stations. Yes, I can. So as I was saying, I'm going to slow down a bit. As we were talking about moving away from policing, and I started to see folks start talking about the investment in social workers, though I do believe that transformation is a process, absolutely. I also feel that that could be, there was more to unpack there. So I shifted to wanting to talk to you all about and share my knowledge about the field of social work, the roots, and where we can continue to push ourselves to shift our paradigm. And actually, with that said, I completely forgot, y'all, to open up my, give me 1 second. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with that said, I want to take us down a little road to unpack social work. And so we're really clear on what we're asking for when we're asking, when we're talking about shifting away from policing, the ways that it can also show up in some of our other systems. So again, just to briefly talk about, because we don't have much time today, I could probably do a whole day's talk on this. I really want to take a critical look and a critical analysis on the history of social work and social services. They're actually, again, so we're all clear, they were built in roots of this field, this profession was built on the foundation and has strong roots in charity, in white saviorism, in pathology. And when I say pathology, what we often do as social workers or folks in the social services is we want to fix individual problems, or we want to see people seeing folks as individuals, right? And let's come up with a plan on how to make it better for them. And the whole idea of fixing and problem solving is also what I consider pathology. And so having that whole mindset and that belief system that people need fixing, and that we can do this one person at a time, that's very individualistic, right? And it's also placing a tremendous amount of responsibility on folks who are just operating in larger oppressive systems, right? So essentially there is no broader analysis that is really a part of social work education. I think there can be, and there are some attempts to do cultural competency and multiculturalism, but still, as we all know, all of us who have been well in the area of diversity and inclusion know that that's not it, right? It also, the roots of social work are also in classifications, right? So discerning and having that power over a person to discern whether they were a deserving or undeserving poor, right? These are actually terms that are part of social work education, that are part of the history. And so even being in the position to have the power over someone, to determine that, but to also have the power to classify folks, to treat them as such, right? Those are all the problematic ways in which social services actually still continue to operate, right? Whether we're using that language or not. Essentially, social services also, which was, I believe, I think once they were settlement houses that came from the Industrial Revolution, right? So it was this field is actually from a reformist movement. So it has roots in reform as well. And as I had talked about, I'm probably going too fast. I'm going to slow down there. I can't see my, just for the organizers here, I can't see the captions because I have or I can't see the chat box because I have my presentation open. So as I was saying, yeah, so I think there has been attempts over the years, right, to build in multiculturalism and culture competency and all that rhetoric to get social work up to speed. But again, it really is still missing the mark, right? And it's the wrong. I don't want to use wrong, but it's a different paradigm. And so again, in thinking about, if we have the opportunity to invest in our community, if we have the opportunity to actually imagine, how do we recreate justice? How do we recreate support, care? It really is, it's a complete paradigm shift. I'm gonna go back to that real quickly, but I'm gonna actually shift here. So as I'm saying, it's shifting the paradigm. It's, I think the way sometimes when I see, shifting into wanting to hire social workers, yes, it might help a little. It might help folks. Social workers are really great to help folks cope, but isn't necessarily there to really challenge the status quo. So what we know is a lot of times, even in our behavioral health or other social support systems, they're still built on systems of domination, power, saviorism, gatekeeping, dominant narratives, right? So when we're talking about a revolution, and when we're talking about abolition is not that, right? Abolition is actually networks of autonomy. It's networks of collective power, shared decision-making, and the space where multiple people can have multiple truths, right? We're really moving away from having one person control the narrative or two people control the narrative. We get to all have a truth, and we get to all say what's best for ourselves and for our community. If I could also take a step back, as I was also saying, so in our current social service system, really also it's all about funding too. And that, because around the time where social work had become an actual field, was also the time of charity, philanthropy, was the time where working, but mostly rich class folks, were urged to contribute their piece, right? And so this was the development of foundations and philanthropy, right? So they get to use their money to dictate how services are going to be run, who's going to be served, right? And those same systems are still in place. Foundations and philanthropy still get a huge say. And though there has been some changes and efforts to eradicate that, again, we're moving slowly, right? These are old ways and old belief systems that still exist, and it takes a while to really challenge that and push that. Another major piece that I want to pick apart is actually is that social workers are also mandated reporters many times. And mandated reporters, and though we definitely want to ensure ways to keep our community safe, again, you know, when we're looking at our child welfare system, there are many flaws in that, and it also can be absolutely systems of surveillance and policing, especially for communities of color, especially for families who are economically struggling, right? So these are all, again, I know at times, right, there's no other ways that we work to support child safety. However, the system is really built on surveillance. And my last plug is that what we currently see when we look at organizations, when we look at traditional nonprofit and social service systems, again, when we're dealing with funders, funding philanthropy, and a long history of saviorism and charity, there's no coincidence that our organizations have deeply embedded cultures of white supremacy. And I don't have the time to go into that, but as y'all see there as a link, I invite every single one of you to go through that and unpack that and see how many times, though these organizations are there to support and provide service, are deeply embedded in a white supremacist culture as well. So, as I said, there is a gradual process for everything. So I know that things aren't going to change because we've been working towards change for a long time, although I do believe that this present moment is giving us a true catalyst to really take it far. So what I always recommend to folks is start building in political educations in our organizations, right? Especially if anybody on this call is a decision maker, it has a role of power in their workplace or in their community. Build in. It is your job as a gatekeeper and as a stakeholder to build in political education and a political analysis in your work. That is one way that we will dismantle white supremacy in this field. Require anti-racist training, not just cultural competency or diversity. That is not enough. We need anti-racist training. And I really push institutions and organizations to revisit policies, especially those that include reporting. You know, we see the push to put social workers in schools, absolutely. And what does it mean when you just have a social worker there who's a mandated reporter? Are we just creating buffers into the same system? So I believe it's time to be critical, y'all. And I do believe that this is how we mitigate and promote change in institutions, but it should never, ever stop us from creating our own autonomous communities and networks. So we do both. I do both. We want to...
5 minutes left, Stephanie. Good.
Okay. Thank you. We absolutely, we need to build our own skills, our networks, our capacities. When I think about abolition, I think about organizing street medics. I think about organizing healers. I think about organizing, I'm from reproductive justice movement, y'all, so I always shout out to midwives and abortion providers. This is how we create our own autonomy. Rapid response networks, mutual aid networks, trauma workers, community accountability facilitators. It's possible, right? We do this. So we need to continue to work towards expanding our community skills and capacities. And I probably don't have enough time, but I will briefly say, you know, the mutual aid networks that we started to build out, when we started to build out, when COVID first hit in Arizona, I was part of that system, and I was getting calls from social service agencies. I don't know how they had my number, but we're asking for referral forms, and we're asking for requirements. And I'm like, y'all, this is not mutual aid, right? That again is trying to co-opt an age-long system of community care into, again, this saviorism and this charity paradigm. That is not it, right? We don't have limits and caps on, on how much we can show up and support for our people. So just super quickly, again, to sort of to counter message and counteract a lot of the messaging that I saw flying around on the Instagram and other social media was, you know, yeah, let's more money, less money for police, more money for you know, many systems that again act as the buffer between people and police actually. And so these are some of the messaging that I found that probably were closer to abolition. And as you can see here, very specific messaging on community self-governs, right? Safe housing. We want community self-determination, worker-owned cooperative, restorative justice. These are what I would look out for as this is where we want to head, right? We don't want to, again, replace a system with one that's probably not quite what we mean or how we're going to get to full liberation. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront. And spend the last couple of minutes just offering, again, this talk was very short, so I just wanted to put a tickler out there. I wanted to start that conversation, but most of all, offer resources. These folks have been my teacher. I was not always here at this place. I was not always an abolitionist, and I was not, though I was always an organizer, I certainly not always had the analysis that I have now. So these folks I attribute to my learning. These Miriam Kaba, Shira Hassan, Insight. These are all folks who do transformative justice, community accountability, Mia Mingus and the Bay Area Transformative Justice Collective. Some more organizations to look up. These folks actually have the models. So I think right now is a good time to talk about the how, right? So this is all information that is accessible to everyone. Movement for Family Power is another powerful one, as they actually do the deep dive into the child welfare system, and they support families. And then Fireweed Collective talks about decolonizing mental health. Kara Page, who talks about the medical industrial complex and healing justice. Great resources. I didn't even have time to get into the medical industrial complex, but I encourage you to look her up. And last but not least, some books. So a lot of the funding that I started to talk about is really beautifully put out in The Revolution Will Not Be Funded. It is a book by Insight Women of Color Against Violence. And again, Fumbling Towards Repair, Beyond Survival, Emergent Strategy. These are all of my teachers and what has helped me get to the intersections of doing radical social work and liberation. And I can stop right there. I've seen a couple of things popping up on my screen, but it's kind of hard for me to look at my presentation.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was very well said. I can actually relate to you there. Have some experience in the social work area, and I definitely know it's built on surveillance and domination. And you get involved, and you think like, all right, I'm gonna make a change. I'm gonna make an impact. And the work that you do definitely do, but it's like it's only so much you can do because it's not the people in it; it's the whole system. So again, that's what we need to do when we speak on abolishing these and dismantling these systems. So very well said. Thank you, and thank you for those resources. Awesome.
Thank you.
Very awesome.